All right. Welcome to oligolf.com. I'm your host, Ive Been, and today my guest, I'm the host. My guest is Corey Sznajder, a hockey analyst who has an interesting story that speaks to process, passion, and persistence. When you do those three things, you usually get excellent. Corey, how are you doing today?
Not bad. How about yourself?
I'm good. I can't complain. I'm very excited. As most listeners know, we normally focus on golf. I'm doing a special, I want to call it a special Tiger project where I'm just like, hey, you know what? I don't care if it's golf, table tennis. I don't think I'll touch NASCAR, but football, hockey, whatever. I want to talk to guys in the game, in the sport that are doing things on the cutting edge. So let's jump in, and before we start breaking down what you do and how you got to this point, I want to start on a lighter note. First of all, your Shutdown Line is your Twitter handle, and you used to run a blog of that name, a hockey-based blog. Two questions: why hockey? And was there a team or a player that you found yourself rooting for prior to your ascension up the ranks, so to speak?
Well, I've always been really interested in sports ever since I was a kid. My parents are both big football fans, and I loved that when I was a kid too. But I was interested in basically all sports. I wanted to play all of them. I wasn't very good at all of them though. But I got really into hockey when I was around 6 or 7. I started going to Washington Capitals games every now and then, and watching the game on TV a lot. And I kind of fell out of it after the first lockout happened. I canceled the season. But a couple of years later, I just started watching it again, and it kind of became sort of like an obsessive thing. Like, I wasn't just watching it when my team was playing. I was watching it basically any game was on. I was watching it and getting really invested and into it. And I guess just the pace of the game is always what I'm interested in, because there's always something going on. There's always something to key on in. There's always something you can break down. And, it just kind of took off from there. And as for certain players who kind of drew me in, it's kind of tough to say because there was just so much back then. But when I was younger and going to Capitals games, I really liked Peter Bondra. He was because I liked guys who could score, and he was the best one on the Caps at the time. And when I started getting back into it, that was when you had the Ovechkin versus Crosby rivalry going on. That was fun to watch all the time. Evgeny Malkin won the Art Ross that year. He's also really fun to watch. And a lot of the goalies also, I kind of got interested in studying. And a couple in particular are Tomas Vokoun and Pekka Rinne of the Nashville Predators. I always liked just watching them, seeing how they play. Same with Roberto Luongo, who was with the Canucks at the time. Now he's with the Florida Panthers. But there was a player on almost every team that I could that I was interested in, and I was excited to watch on basically any given night. Did I get that?
Oh, I'm sorry. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. I was saying I'm kind of happy that somebody else kind of likes Roberto Luongo, the goaltender, as well. Him and Eddie Lack cracked me up with their Twitter friendship, or whatever you want to call it. Yeah. So from what you're saying, you had a nice but sort of instant immersion or re-immersion into hockey after the lockout.
Yeah. Well, the problem with hockey after the lockout was, there weren't many national games on during the time. Like the league didn't really advertise them well. Like they're on in the middle of the day on NBC or something called the Outdoor Life Network, which took me at least a year to find on my TV. But then they started putting more games back on weekdays, and it was easier to find local games too on a CSN for the Capitals. So I think it took a few years for people to kind of get lured back in America. At least it's how it was for me. And I assume some other people probably had the same, I don't want to call it complications, but the same issues with hockey after the lockout. But once you got back in, there was a lot of stuff going on at the time. And it was just really easy to get sucked into if you like exciting sports.
Yeah, no, I mean, I totally agree. So how did you get started blogging? Because that's where, is it safe to say that's where you started blogging about hockey?
Yes and no, sort of. I was always, when I went to college, that's when I started blogging because I had a lot of downtime. I had a weird schedule, so I had Tuesdays and Thursdays off basically. And I started blogging about just any sport I'm interested in. I blogged a little bit about football, baseball, and hockey on this personal blog that I had. And I was cranking out 2 or 3 posts a week or something like that. It wasn't anything serious, but as the season went on, I started doing a little more day-to-day hockey stuff. And eventually the website Blogwin, or I guess network Blogwin, they noticed it and asked me if I wanted to run a Carolina Hurricanes blog, and I said yes. And that's basically how that started. Then I started doing day-to-day stuff on the Hurricanes, and then that evolved into me doing more in-depth statistical analysis, tracking scoring chances and then tracking zone entries and exits the following year. And that's kind of been, that was basically what I was doing full-time for at least a year or two. I think 2 years, actually.
Wow. Now, before we talked about the All Three Zones project, I remember when we talked previously, you talked about how they wanted, and you just mentioned how they wanted you, the Blogwin Network wanted you to do a Carolina Hurricanes blog, but you weren't a Carolina Hurricanes fan. You weren't intimately aware of the team, their strategy, this, that, and the other. Can you rehash the process of getting acclimated to the team and just what you needed to do to blog responsibly on them?
Well, the thing with me in hockey was I was a Caps fan when I was a kid, but once I got back into it, I didn't really have a team because the Caps traded some of my favorite players, and I was still kind of mad about that at the time. And when I started getting back into it, I was a Carolina sports fan. I'm a big Carolina Panthers fan, and they were kind of my team. But the problem was that I lived in Maryland. I couldn't follow them every day. I couldn't learn about them as well as I could say Washington because they were on TV all the time, basically. So I was a kind of a casual fan, when I got back into hockey, but they weren't my team. I still wrote about them though on the blog because a lot of stuff that I did was on the Southeast Division, which is where the Caps played, and I usually kept a running tab of all Southeast Division games that went on at the time. That went on during that year, and did a little update on how each team was doing, what they're going to do at the trade deadline, any roster moves or stuff they made, and then Blogwin said they needed someone to write their. They were looking for someone to run a Carolina Hurricanes blog, and I said, yeah, I'll do this full time. And while they were getting the site set up, which took about a month or so, I was basically learning as much as I could about the Hurricanes. So, like, I knew the team like the back of my hand. Basically, I could name every single player. I could recognize them on the ice without having to squint and see what their numbers are, and basically just try to learn their system, which was kind of a waste of time because I fired the coach the year after. But but still, it was a lot of work to try to basically learn everything that I could about the team and their prospects and all that.
So, and like I said, we'll get to the Three Zones project shortly. When you started out, were there any like resources or people or guys who were doing what you were doing that you admired, you followed, tools online, or I don't know, books or whatever that you would read just to try to get ahead or be competent or be more competent, I should say?
There's a whole lot of it going on. Like, that was this was the 2009-2010 season. Like when I made like my Twitter accounts, and when I started writing a little bit about hockey and like talking about it with some people in comment sections online. And one of the blogs I read every day was BehindTheNet.com, which was a site basically dedicated to advanced stats in hockey. And the writer there, Gabriel Desjardins, every single day he had like a short, quick post on something that was going on in the league and just his take on it and what the numbers said. And another blog called ObjectiveNHL.blogspot.com, which is run by a guy who went by the name Jay Lincolns, who unfortunately passed away this summer. But he had some great posts on there about just stats in hockey. He showed why stuff like possession and winning the shot battle is important in a context of a game and in the context of the season. And there's just a lot of great stuff on blogs going on at the time then.
Okay, so now let's jump into the All Three Zones project. What is it, and how did you come about creating it?
Well, it goes back to another writer that I sort of followed back then. Like one of the big things that was going on in the advanced stats world in like 2011 was tracking your own stats that the NHL did not provide. And I was doing scoring chances, and a Flyers blog called Broad Street Hockey had a couple people tracking zone entries. And one of them was Eric Tulsky, who he and a few other people, they tracked the whole season of Flyers entries for the Philadelphia Flyers, as well as a few other teams. I helped contribute to that too with some stuff I did during the most recent lockout. And he presented that at the Sloan Sports Analytics Conference, and it showed why zone entries are important in terms of being able to win the possession battle in hockey. And it showed that teams who, I don't know if I can like get really like deep into this because
no, you don't have to.
But basically it showed.
Sorry, one of the things we probably should have said at the top, you were recently hired by a anonymous NHL team, so we want to definitely honor that agreement. So by all means, don't go back, don't cross the line, if you will.
Well, the thing is that this is like that's already public. Like that's already public, so I'm not really infringing on any secrets here. I'm just not sure if they ever want me like saying it, but that project and Eric's work and his presentation there showed why tracking zone entries is important, and it showed basically how important it is, like in terms of being able to win the possession battle, and how it leads to teams out shooting their opponents, and there's a lot more that you can discover with that, like finding out like just go like in terms of going into like individual contributions from players and things like that. So that was a really big thing that was going on then.
Wow. And now let's talk about I think one of the coolest things about the All Three Zones project, and you did a great job of understating it. So I'm gonna have to have my work cut out here. But this is something that you took on by yourself. How did you try to get it funded? Did you have any bigger aspirations for it, or was it just like according to just your story right now, where you're just, hey, you like the game, there's an angle, there's an angle with data that nobody else is doing, I'm going to step in and do it. We'll see where this goes.
Yeah, well, the thing with that is with Eric's presentation there, it showed that this is really important, but there is only so much data available. Like that was only one season that was presented. So if we had more data, we could look deeper into what other teams are doing. We could possibly look into past seasons, see what other teams did in the past, how that could help, build a strategy in the future. So, really, people just wanted more data, but it takes a lot of work to actually get it, because you have to watch an entire game and track zone entries, and it's a really, really painstaking task for someone who's never done it before. Like when I first did it, it took me a good while to finish it, but now I can get games done pretty quickly, just because I've been doing it for so long. And I was just trying to help spread. I was basically just trying to help make more data public and spread it around, so that more people a lot smarter than I am, can help use it to find conclusions and possibly make some new discoveries.
Now, did you set up like a Kickstarter? Did you ask people to donate on PayPal? How did you get let's just say the general public, not so much the other bloggers and other guys who were crunching data to get in on it?
Well, I've been doing this on my Hurricanes blogs for the last 2 seasons before I mentioned I was doing it for the entire, before I went forward with the project. And everyone said they always loved my breakdowns after games, and they always loved seeing they always loved getting a closer look at the game from my posts. And they always mention I wish someone was doing this for X team. I wish someone was doing this for my team or on my blog. And I was kind of doing it. I was doing it for a Canucks blog also that year. And then I was just doing some random games here and there, on the off chance I decided to start doing it full time. And then just one day I decided, all right, I'm just gonna start doing it. And I've been doing it for a couple months, basically all day, every day. I put my blog on hold a little bit to get as much done of this project as I could. And then I just mentioned on Twitter, just my exact words were, if someone were crazy enough to track zone entries and exits for an entire season, would you consider paying for the data? And everyone said yes. And someone mentioned that I should start a Kickstarter or a donation page, to get it online. And I said, and that's what I did. And I got at least 70 or 100 donations on the first day. And it's been just growing, and it was just growing for months. It's pretty crazy.
Wow. So, I mean, let's take a quick little pause. What in your mind are you thinking? Hey, this might be bigger than what I thought, or is this more so just, yeah, people should be interested in this? What was your thought process when you got 100 donations?
Well, a little of both, because people mention to me all the time that this is valuable stuff for them. This is some valuable stuff that I'm doing. I'm not just sitting at home watching hockey just because I don't want a real job. They said, this is all valuable stuff, and you're doing a lot of work in order to do it. You should be compensated for it. But at the same time, I'm just kind of I'm watching hockey. I shouldn't be getting paid to do this. Mm. But I did have some plans for it. Like one of the things I was going to do, like like at the end of the project, I was thinking about building a site kind of like I don't know if you're familiar with Pro Football Focus, but what that does, that's kind of like an advanced stat site for the NFL. Like they have a team of guys that watches every single play, breaks it down, and gives a score, and gives them a score based on that. And it gives like some really good information on basically any on basically every NFL team. And NFL teams subscribe to that and use it, and they made a pretty good, and they turned that into a pretty successful business venture. And I was thinking about doing something like that myself. I don't know if I would have ever had the means to pull it off. That was kind of like my long-term plans with this.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, like I'm thinking about. I think the guy who runs Pro Football Focus is Neil Hornsby, who, yes, I think he's one of the guys I've reached out to. I have to double check on that name, but yeah, I mean, I think one of the craziest things about when you start to just honestly go the extra mile in something that you're both passionate at, and you have to be good at it. I mean, people aren't going to lie to you. They're not going to say, "Hey, Corey, yeah, keep making those, keep analyzing those zone entries, when it's not good." They're going to ignore you, So when you go down that path, I like to call it the wormhole. It's funny because, I mean, and one of the things that you said that kind of blew my mind, and I wanted to make sure I came back and asked you, you said it doesn't take you as long to watch and analyze games now. So I'm guessing do you watch games at 1.5 times speed, 2 times the speed? Is it, can you break that down? Because I don't think a lot of people don't understand how, when you watch a game, to be able to analyze the game or to scout a player with video, you're not watching a 3-hour game. You might as well at least double it because you go back so many times. I remember when I would watch film when I played football, and it's like it really is a commitment. So, I mean, how long does it take you now? How long did it used to take to analyze film?
Well, my first game that I did, I remember it pretty vividly because it was a really grueling task. It took me about I want to say 6 hours because it was an entire night that it took me to finish one game. And right now, I'd say it takes me it takes me about an hour and a half to 2 or 3 hours, depending on the length and depending on how difficult the game is.
That's pretty good.
Because at this point, I know what to look for, and I know each of the things I'm keen on, and I'm familiar with most of the players and what their style is, and I can tell who they are pretty quickly.
Yeah.
That and if you watch a game live, it's 3 hours, but there's a lot of stuff you can skip through, like commercials, TV timeouts, pauses, and all this and all of other stuff.
Exactly. So now I want to sort of maybe not switch, but focus on the more you specific side of what you do, not so much the data. How did you develop your skills? Was it just immersing yourself, just continuing to immerse yourself and try to keep up? Well, maybe keep up is a harsh word, but try to think along the same lines as all the other hockey bloggers or analysts that you were aware of or that you try to share that space with?
Yeah, what I always kind of told myself when I got into sports and sports writing is that I don't want to write about anything that I don't know, because like I'm not on the field, I'm not at the rink. Like I can't say if a player, say if he's playing through an injury or if he didn't give it like a full effort on something. Like that's not fair. Like I want to like analyze exactly what happened, like what happened during the game, and going the extra mile to track things like entries and exits and scoring chances like that. That's kind of like what I did to like get like a clear picture of what happened during the game.
Okay.
I kind of always wanted to be like precise as possible. It's always been my thing though. Like that was kind of me in school too. Like I wanted everything like if I was doing like a project or a report, I wanted everything to be like perfect, and I basically didn't stop until I made sure it was fine and ready to be turned in.
Yeah, it's. I was talking with somebody I think yesterday, and it's funny. Like I am the most laziest person unless I'm motivated, and that sounds like a contradiction, you know. But if you tell me, hey David, I need you to write a 10-page paper, I would look at you and say, for what? Why? You know, like I would try to get out of it. But if you told me, David, I need you to write a 20-page research paper on the, I don't know, the 1996 Chicago Bulls, I would be like, by when? You know, because it wouldn't even take me. It wouldn't even be about doing it. It'd be so much fun, and I'm so channeled into it that I wouldn't even think twice about it. You know, and I think it's funny how our little, somewhat idiosyncrasies and just how we do things naturally. I think the quote that I like to say is, how you do anything is how you do everything. And that sort of shines through, especially in what you're saying.
Yeah, I mean, that's just the thing. Like I was always really interested in sports stats and all this. Like, and I always was a lot more like eager to learn about it than say like organic chemistry or something that like you're required to take first year in college that you have absolutely no interest in.
Yeah, totally. So let's keep going here. Here's somewhat of a deep question, and you know, answer it however you feel. So you've attained, and I'm not saying this like you're done, but you've attained a certain level of success. Your projects and your ability has taken you to a place where, I mean, honestly, you get to watch hockey and run numbers for a living, or at least to be compensated for it. What have you had to give up to enjoy that success?
Other than like at least 10 nights of sleep, not a whole lot, because I don't know. Never felt like I was making a lot of sacrifices with it, because I'm not someone that really like went out a lot in college, and I live kind of in the middle of nowhere, so it's not really much like nightlife going on around here. So basically all I had for the last few years is just work, and I figured why not try to make work fun and do something like this, like for a living, or at least to occupy most of my spare time and get some kind of compensation for it. So I just figured, why not just give this a shot and see where it goes. If it fails, it fails. I'll just go find another job. But that was another thing, though. Like when my junior or senior year of college, I heard all the horror stories about if you want to work in sports, good luck, because it's probably not going to happen. And you're probably better off looking at like another job that you might not be crazy about, or you might just work in retail or something like that. And like I heard all the horror stories about how hard it is to get a job like right out of college, especially in something that you like. So I kind of just figured, why not try this and see where it takes me. Like at worst, I would be just working freelance, and I would just be working freelance for not as much money, which isn't the worst thing in the world, and working somewhere else on the side. So I figured it was worth a shot and just let's see where it took me, and I basically just rolled snake eyes, I guess, with this.
No kidding. So, I mean, my next question after that, it's fair to say it's been worth it, just stepping out. And, I mean, nobody, okay, let me rephrase that, because there's probably a couple of people out there. Anybody who puts up anything online, whether it's a Twitter account, this is regarding sports, a Twitter account or a blog, they don't necessarily, they hope it's successful. They hope that they have X amount of people following. They hope it turns into something worth their while. But it's fair to say that the things that you've had to give up, it's been worth it thus far, correct?
Yeah, I would say so. And the early days of my blog, no one, I don't want to say nobody cared, because I had a few readers, but it wasn't a whole lot. I saw the websites, I saw no one was really reading my blog, but I just kept doing it every day for at least 2 years, and just more people just started to notice, and that's really kind of how I built my reader base, and that's how more people saw my project than they would have otherwise. I was just coming out of nowhere doing this.
Yeah. I mean, and I said this to you when we talked previously. I played at West Virginia University, played football. It was cool. I mean, I say that not to, be a humble brag or anything like that. I mean, we got to go to Sugar Bowl. I played a couple of years of arena ball. It was pretty cool. I mean, it's one of those things where, I mean, it's what I always wanted to do as a kid. I always wanted to work in sports as a kid. That was it for me. I didn't really care too much about being a politician or a lawyer or a doctor. All those things just seemed like you might as well say, hey, David, do you want to go to Mars? And I'd been like, no. No, I didn't want any part of that. But like I told you earlier in the week, or the last time we talked, I think it's awesome to be able to see a need in general, but definitely in sports, and to fill it. A lot of people kind of gloss over that, like, oh, well, there's plenty of people doing it, or, the big networks, like ESPN, or the data companies like an IBM or whoever are doing that. And the crazy thing is that they may be doing it, but the cutting edge is where you started. It's guys, some girls, some women who are emphatic and passionate about a sport, at least enjoying it, and they wanna be more knowledgeable about their sport. You did that, and now you're in a position to say, the only thing I've had to sacrifice is, from what you're telling me, is just boredom, or doing what everybody else is doing.
Yeah, and at least a month's worth of sleep, but that's not a big deal. I have plenty of time to do that later.
Yeah, no kidding. A couple more questions here. So, where do you see, and this is sort of a loaded question, but I wanted to get at least a slice of your opinion. Where do you see hockey analytics going? We talked previously about how the rise of fantasy sports is almost giving that's almost like a whole nother beast of an industry with data. But where do you see the future of hockey analytics in general terms? You don't have to give me any Nostradamus level insight per se.
Well, I think there's going to be a lot more data public, at least, whether it's from people who are doing this like as a side project, or whether it's from the NHL if they ever decide to start tracking more events and putting them up online. But I think there's more demand for this now because the fans want to know. It's weird. I don't even think 2 years ago, like, you'd be hard pressed to find blogs in general that gave you like a report of attempted shots in a single game. Like, you kind of had to dig to find that. Now, like, on Twitter, you go to any team blog or any team blogger, they'll post it basically after every period. So like, that's just so common now. Like, I've seen broadcasts do it too. Like, they're not just doing shots on goal anymore. It's now attempted shots because more people want to know. And I've seen a lot more stats on broadcasts now too. So I think there's going to be a lot more data public, just because, if anything, just because that's what the people want right now, because they want to know more about their teams than just what the eye test tells them.
Yeah. I mean, that's a great insight, because I think we're getting to the point. It's almost like and this is kind of a weird thing to say, but I think it makes sense. Sports, especially, are becoming more open source, sort of like software. And it's not on the level of software where you can, build or buy your own team. That's definitely a very closed network. But like you said, fans want to know. People want to know. And I think that can only make the game better, or at least the entertainment and enjoyment of watching the game better. This is a question that I kind of wrote down, and I was like, I wonder how this is going to come off, because you're not necessarily like a coach or a player or like dare I say, a motivational, like a personal coach or whatever. But I think this is going to be an interesting answer in a good way. And the question is, what athlete, coach, maybe even analyst or personality would you want to spend a week with to get behind-the-scenes access to their process, or how they break things down, how they build, let's say, a game plan or a project or whatever? It doesn't have to be sports-related necessarily, but who would you pick?
That's a really good question, because I never really had a lot of idols when I was a kid, to be honest, or right now, honestly. I just do things by myself. So I have to think about that a lot. Like, I'm not sure if I have an answer right now, to be honest, to see how, like, what they do behind the scenes. There's a lot. Actually, more I think about it, there's a lot I can think of. Because, like, I'm a big music buff. I used to write about music online. And, like, I always wondered, like, what goes through an artist's head, like, when they write, like, a certain riff, or, like, when they're producing a record or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Because there's a lot that goes into that. I was wondering, like, what kind of sound they were trying to give off. Because it's such a subjective thing, too. Like, what sounds great to one person might sound terrible to another. So what sounds great to an artist might sound terrible to, say, one of their longtime fans. Or they're disappointed with, like, a bad record. So I guess, like, that's one thing that I always kind of wanted to see, like, behind the scenes. Like, I always love watching, like, behind the scenes, like, making of records and all that stuff, because it's always cool to see what the artist is trying to pull off there, and not just what we hear and what we assume they're thinking.
Yeah, that's a great answer, because I didn't even think about that perspective. Because, like you said, there's so much scrutiny, but at the same time, I mean, sometimes you got to go with your gut in producing a record or a sound that hasn't been popular or popularized before. I think that's a great answer. Now, 2 more questions. Now, I know that you're not a morning person at all, right?
If you count staying up all night, well, people on Twitter know this. Like, if you count staying up all night and just annoying everyone with hockey observations and screenshots until the crack of dawn, then no, I'm not a morning person.
Wow. Well, okay, so if you're not a morning person, which is fine. I mean, everybody's different. What is the one thing or the handful of things that you have to do every day for it to be productive? Is it have a cup of coffee? Is it read X paper? Is it walk the dog? Like what is the one thing or the handful of things that you have to do every day or just off?
Well, it used to be going for a run and working out, but I haven't done that in a while because it's cold outside, and it's especially dangerous right now because it just snowed, and I don't want to like bust a kneecap or anything like that out there. I have to shower every day too, though, because like if I don't shower, then I feel like I've done absolutely nothing in a day because you just feel kind of gross and grimy, and like you're still in your PJs too. Like that's kind of like the lowest point. That's kind of like the lowest point for me because if I'm still in like sweatpants or something by noon, then I know I'm behind schedule. Even if I don't leave my house, I still gotta shower and like get dressed because I don't know. That's just a thing I'm always kind of quirky about.
I'm laughing not out of criticism. I'm laughing because I know it's like the weirdest thing. Like if. And you know, in my day job, you know, I mean, I wake up like 3 or 4 hours before. I'm a morning person. I wake up. If I have to be at work at 8:30, I'm up at like 5. I mean, I try to get as many things done well before I go into work as possible. But it's funny on my days off, like at the end of the year, I took 2 weeks off. Okay, I planned it that way, and I banked my vacation days from earlier in the year. I kid you not, if I didn't shower before like 1 or 2, that day was a wash. Like when I say wash, I mean just like I just felt like going to bed at like 4 o'clock because like the day is done and I haven't even started. So I'm laughing because it's like, yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yep. Like I know some people who actually like their days without showering. I don't know how though.
Yeah, no kidding. All right, well, last question, and hopefully it's not a stumper. But at the same time, hopefully you drop some knowledge here. What is one piece of advice that you'd give to somebody? I mean, whether they're into hockey and data or football and data, well, who cares? Honestly, as long as it's sports related, you know, no matter what point they are in their career or their project, they want to start something. Because I mean, let's do a quick recap. You were in college, and I mean, heck, you were writing about music, and now you know. You're watching NHL games and you're being compensated for it by breaking down things that are happening, okay? This isn't something that you applied for, you know? This isn't something that was in a classified. This is something that you created. You created your own market. So what's one piece of advice or a perspective that you would share with somebody who either wants to start, you know, from scratch, or they're in college looking to see what the professional world will have for them?
Well, I mean, I would, like, my advice is kind of cliche, like, sort of. It's just kind of the whole, if you have something that you always wanted to do, or if you have something that you think you can do and is realistic, then just go for it. Because you never know, like, what that might turn into. If you succeed, or even if you fail with it, it might open the doors for some opportunities. You might make some connections somewhere. So, that's just the one thing, because that's what I did. Like, I was at the point where, like, when I started the project, like, I was kind of at a crossroad in my life. I wasn't sure what I was going to do because I just graduated college, and I've been through the whole, you know, run of job rejections and applying and all that. And I kind of figured, like, why not just try to do something that I enjoy and something that people are actually interested in. and just see where it takes me. And and if it doesn't work out, I mean, at least I tried. At least I didn't just stop doing it and then wonder what would happen if I did this or that. So that's kind of just what I have to say, because that's basically what I did.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. It sounds cliche, but yeah, you have to do it. You have to do it, or you'll be 20, 30 years down the line, and you'll be kicking yourself because somebody who seems way less qualified than yourself had the guts to do it, and now they're doing it. That's something that it didn't necessarily drive me, but I always wanted to just I don't want to have any regrets, and especially in sports. I mean, playing the game or coaching the game is different, or owning the game or owning a team is different. We all know that you either had to be 6'8", 250 in high school, a la LeBron James. You got to have some physical ability and talent to actually play sports. To coach, it helps to be a former player. That always helps. In fact, I would say it's probably, let's not even get into those numbers, but that's probably one of the more determining factors. And we all know to own a team, you probably have to have success in business outside of sports to even be in that market. But for the rest of us, the common sports fans who just love whatever our sport of choice is, and there's an angle, and if you have enough passion and you can make constructive headway on it, you can create something that people want. And that's the most inspiring thing about your story for me. It's that, did you plan the majority of this? Probably not. But it's not like this was all just some huge accident. I like how it's enough in the black but enough in the white, that it's gray enough to where you can see that there was somewhat of an inclination, but there was never a plan. And that plan was just defined by you getting stuff done and doing stuff. A lot of times I think people they get disheartened when things don't go to plan. And you can definitely speak on this, and we'll wrap it up here. But it's not always about having a plan. It's just about being able to get certain eyes on what you're doing already.
Yeah, when people always ask me about where I got today, I just kind of tell them it just kind of happened, because I didn't really have any discrete plan with this whole thing. Everything just kind of happened as it went along, and I also tell them I got lucky, basically. But at the same time, I also did a lot of work in order to kind of create that luck. So, yeah, it's a little. It's a little the whole thing is still in progress though, because I'm still pretty young. I'm not sure what I'll do after this, or who knows. So, well,
the beauty of what you just said is that you're probably going to figure it out. You're probably going to have the option to do what you would want to do, or maybe even way more than that down the road. So yeah, I wouldn't. How old are you?
20. I just turned 24.
Yeah, that's it's funny because to some people that might be a indictment on what they haven't done. But to me, that's inspiration, because there's no excuse. There's no excuse. As long as you want to be a part of it, there's no excuse.
Yeah, that's kind of how I feel when I see a lot of hockey players now, because a lot of them are younger than me.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm getting to that point where it's I'm getting to that point where I have to say, yep, I'm getting old, but not really. Not really. Let's be realistic here. It's only you're only 24. I kind of feel I kind of feel like if I told my story like to like a career counselor or something, they'd just say, "Yeah, don't follow what this guy did. He's crazy." It's like I kind of just don't. Like I said, I feel like it's just kind of happened, and that's really how I feel like it went. And they're going to tell him like that's only like he's a special case probably. So I might not be giving myself enough credit, but who knows?
Yeah. No, I mean it's again, like I said earlier, how you do anything is how you do or how you approach everything, and it's I get it. I'm sort of like that. It's at the end of the day, being who you are has enough challenges of its own. That's why I agree with what you said earlier. Just hey, if you see it and you want to do it, just go do it. Because at the end of the day, nobody else is going to do it the way that you see it. And again, I mean, whether it's an age thing or there's no boundaries for the most part. You can set up your own blog. You can reach out to people to talk to. You can crunch your own numbers and put them on Twitter. Like there's no excuse. So again, that's one of the reasons why I was excited to talk to you, because I agree with you. It just sort of happened, but then you look at it and it's like, well, he wasn't exactly lucky either. Like, I mean, the timing was very, very optimal, but I mean, it's not like, somebody spun him around and blindfolded him and told him to hit the pinata and he hit it and now he's lucky. Like there's 3-4 years of work that you put into it at least, so.
Yeah, something like that. Like that's another thing. Like I'm seeing there's a lot of new bloggers like coming out of like the woodwork and doing this kind of stuff. And like I've seen a few people actually actually talk to me and ask me like what did you do to start this project, and like how do you like keep yourself motivated to do it every day, because I'm thinking about doing something similar. And like it's still kind of weird when people ask me that, but I guess there's still a market. There's still a market for that, like online, because I always see people on Twitter asking, "Is anyone tracking like entries for X team? Like, is anyone tracking this or that?" Because there's still even with a lot of the new stat sites out there, like there's still a call for more data that like has to be personally tracked. And there's a lot of people like on blogs doing it now, so that's always really cool to see. Like that was the thing. Like there was their whole like they called it the summer of analytics this summer in hockey, or the NHL at least, because a lot of bloggers were getting hired, like myself included, and like people were worried, is this going to be like a brain drain from Twitter and the internet, because a lot of bloggers are leaving and they can't talk about hockey anymore. But like for every like one or two that have left, like 2 or 4 have kind of shown up and are doing work that's like I dare say just as good or even better.
Wow.
So like there's still a lot more out there, just because that's what everyone's interested in now.
Yeah, I'm scrolling through, and I promise this isn't going to be pretty soon. We're definitely gone a little bit over. You mentioned bloggers getting picked up, and I want to say it was New Year's Day or New Year's Eve. You retweeted a tweet about, I forget his name, an article. One of the foremost hockey analytics bloggers wrote about finding your voice. Can you talk about that? Because I mean, yeah, some guys were able to climb the ladder. Some other guys will not, and it has nothing to do with talent. It has everything to do with getting lucky per se. So I mean, what's your take on that? I mean, I know you sort of mentioned that right now, but like, what's your overall take on that?
Like finding your voice or your niche in a way.
Yeah, because that's one thing where you're not going to say, but I will. I mean, that's one thing I think that you're almost understated to the point of where if anybody's following you, they're almost like, Corey, you got to talk about this stuff more. And you're so, like, everything that you're doing is so, it's so spot on. And I think that's because you know your voice, your writing style. You know what projects that you want to work on, how you want to work on them.
Like my voice was basically what I said earlier about like just taking everything that happens during the game and just trying to make sense of it, and not just making assumptions based on what I saw. I just took everything that happened during the game and just put it into a post and say, all right, here is what happened. Here is why X team won. Here's what went right for them. Here's what went wrong for them. Here's what they did well. Here's what they did poorly. Like, it's pretty concrete and a little boring. Like, it's not really a lot of flair. There's not a lot of flair to it or snark. But it was just like straight and to the point. Because like I'm not really good. I've always been terrible at like sarcasm and satire and that stuff. So I just like my writing, I always try to be like as direct as possible.
Mm-hmm.
Like so people would like understand, not trying to talk down to them and say like, hey, like if you don't understand this, you're stupid.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, it works, and I mean, this is obviously not the beginning or the end, but the work that you're doing, it's helping to, as we said earlier, open up the game more for fans, and maybe improve certain decisions that are made, or how we view what success or performance really means in hockey. And I think no matter what sport you're in, or even no matter what type of business you're in, when you can make better decisions because you have data to back it up, you put yourself in a position to win. And isn't that why we play or follow or enjoy sports? We don't play sports. And don't get me wrong, that's a whole other conversation, but we don't just play sports just to play them. With all that money being thrown around, we're not just playing it just to play it. Let's be honest. But Corey, I'll definitely hand you the mic last year. I appreciate you coming on to the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It was a fun conversation.
Yeah, we'll definitely touch base soon. But definitely everybody check out olliegolf.com. And one more thing before we wrap it up here. I started a new private email book recommendation list. I basically recommend books from sports world, business world, and just great books overall. So I'm finishing up Phil Jackson's 11 Rings. I have timeless classics on there. I have books on soccer. I have books on business and tech and T-Boone Pickens, for crying out loud. A lot of good books. So if you're interested in sports, business, and mastery, those are the books. Those are the things that I read in my spare time. I don't even have spare time. I make time to read those books. But, Corey, again, thank you. And thank you to everybody else for listening.